Welcome to Margin of Thought, where we make space for the questions that matter. I'm your host, Priten, and together we'll explore questions that help us preserve what matters while navigating what's coming. Today I'm speaking with Kim Cowperthwaite, an English language arts teacher who spent years watching her students' relationship with writing evolve alongside technology. Kim isn't afraid of AI in the classroom. In fact, she's enthusiastic about it. But her enthusiasm comes with intentionality. She's grappling with the question many educators face. How do we balance embracing technology's potential to enhance creative expression and protecting the foundational skills that make that learning possible? Let's get started.
My name is Kim Cowperthwaite. I'm an English language arts teacher at Freeport Middle School in Freeport, Maine. I've always taught language arts at the middle school level. I, before this, worked in the news industry just a little bit, and I was going to go out to Hollywood and make films. That didn't happen, but love working with crazy adolescent kids. And I'm a reader, writer myself, and so just love what I do. And I'm just, when AI started coming on the picture as far as its implications in education, I just got so excited. And then was not met with the same enthusiasm with my colleagues. So I've had to back up and ease into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that. That's actually exactly how I've described my reaction. I saw this stuff come out and I was very excited. And then we started talking to teachers and everybody was scared and frustrated and angry. And I was like, oh, I had the wrong emotional reaction apparently. Before we talk about AI, I'd love to just start with your earliest memory as a student of using technology in an educational context. What is that memory for you?
Yeah, I don't know. I grew up in a high-tech home for the 1970s. We had recorders, and my dad was very into technology, and I was always very excited by recording things with my video camera and my little Panasonic tape recorder, and my Walkman was like, wow, the world, because I could listen to music with somebody else. I had the dual model. We could plug both our headphones in. And I was in a small Catholic school that had no technology. And I left there and transferred to our middle school, which was brand new, high-tech, open classroom. It had a TV studio, it had microfiche and all that technology to look at stuff. And I was just really excited by that. So I think my earliest memories were just looking at going into the room and going through that microfiche and going through on camera or on the screen. About college level is when the early PCs started coming in, the desktops. And when I was in college, I also worked at our local newspaper in Portland. I had moved from Connecticut to Maine and had probably one of the earliest forms of this idea of the internet, because we had the Associated Press lines coming in from all around the world. And my job in college was to sift through that and look for the salient stories coming across the wire. And then I do remember in the mid 1980s, late 1980s, sitting in a news meeting talking about this thing that was coming, that digital online reading newspaper industry would go under. And here I am sitting in this mega building with a printing press and an underground tunnel and the physical composing room where they were still hand composing and digital composing, thinking, oh, wow, that's really exciting. And since then, the industry has just collapsed. I feel very grateful that I was on the tail end to see that industry.
I'm interested to hear a little bit about what that's looked like for you in the last few years when another big change has happened. Again, before we get to the present day, your earliest teaching memories of when you tried a new tech tool in your classroom, either on your own or because you were told that you had to.
The district I was in, or actually all of Maine, we were the first one-to-one state. And so I've never taught without my kids having one-to-one laptops. So my earliest memories were the giant white Apple computers that were really heavy, and they'd hit the ground and the screen would break and they'd fly around the room like a pizza and the top would come off. But it was just really, really exciting. And what I noticed is that reluctant writers were more excited about writing using a document to write on, to type. I know we're going in the future, but what I've noticed is that buy-in to write has changed significantly with the incredible amount of distractions now on those laptops. But at first, the quality, it elevated the level of writing rapidly. And that was in 2004. when I first started teaching with it.
And we can continue that line of thought. When you talked about like the quality improving, the student engagement with writing improving with the device introduction, when do you see that wane away? Did you consistently see improvement for a while, or did it start deteriorating rapidly, or has it deteriorated at all?
Consistently seeing improving until kind of Google came on the scene. And then holding kids' engagement while they're in a classroom and they can drift off anywhere they want all over the world. So that's been a bit harder. I started to see the kind of the loss of engagement a little bit. We always use COVID as that point, but a little bit before COVID. And then I saw kind of like a little bump up in engagement when I was online teaching, when we were all in lockdown. And then it's drifted right off again.
What does it look like post-COVID, pre-AI? I don't know. There's a really small snippet of time we had between
Yes.
those two.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what that looked like in terms of both student engagement, but also quality of their work.
Well, my students or the students in Freeport are just leaning into AI and they're not skillfully using it yet. It hasn't been widespread introduced around the building. I'm probably one of the few that's been talking about it. I see the sideways looks like, oh, she knows kind of stuff. And like, yeah, I know when you use it. And so we're just kind of in that early phase of it. And the engagement as far as access to it is just amateur, big unknown, uncertain. What are the procedures for using it? What aren't? My older brother told me about it. Should I sneak around? Oh, I'm going to get in trouble, so I won't. That's where we are now.
Tell me a little bit about those explicit conversations, because especially if you're one of the educators talking about directly with the students, there is this like hushness to the AI usage in most schools, especially in middle school. I think that it starts to get a little bit more open, I think, as they get older. What is their initial reaction beyond, oh, she knows? Because that sounds right to me, but I'm assuming there's other
Yeah.
components. Yeah.
I picked up on that about just a year ago. So this year, when my new class came in, it just became a big part of our community. What I share, everything I've learned about AI, the conferences I've been to when I get back from one, I spend a day, we share out, we play with it. I just talk about how do I know when you're using it? And I tell them, this is how I know. And then we talk about when is it appropriate to use and when is it a great tool to use. And I'm always really positive about it, as well as building them up as human beings and intelligent, fabulous writers.
And are they receptive to that? So tell me a little bit about what that means for like when they're making the decision to use AI or not, like those conversations, how do you see those spill over? Like, what do you require them to tell you when they're using AI? Are they open about it? Do you still get instances where you feel like they've used AI inappropriately? Those kinds of scenarios I'd love to hear more about.
Yeah, we're just dipping into using it in the classroom. And that's just, right out there. I'm telling them, here's what we're doing. Let's play around with it, or let's use it for research and let's compare our results. Let's see what we're finding. Let's work in a group. What are you finding? What are you finding? And then we report out on it. I've had a couple instances where they're not in the classroom with me. They're doing something on their own. It's usually last minute and late, and it comes in and it was written by AI. So then I had to make a decision. How am I going to approach this? Because I have no guidelines to do so. So I just made a decision of just telling the student, you used AI. Here's how I know. Here's your regular writing, blah, blah, blah. Here's the sentence length. Here's the sentence structure. And then I just say, they think they're getting in trouble. And I say, what did you think of what AI wrote? And they start telling me. And then I say, what was your intention? And then I have them redo it. And what did you learn from this? What can you mine from it and put into your own piece? And then we go forward. I don't call a home. It's not punitive. I just keep moving. So far, that's worked. I don't know. I don't know what September will bring.
Right. No, but that's reassuring to me, is that the students are receptive to those conversations and that you find success in being able to reorient that conversation from being this like, oh, like we have all these tools to catch you and I'm going to like look at your history of every keystroke. You talked about making them understand the value of their own writing. How receptive are they to those conversations and how do you frame them when they can use ChatGPT to write something at least. Yeah.
Yeah, I still do writing by hand in journals. Let's go different spots in the room. Let's go outside. Let's write a little bit. Let's generate our ideas. And then which idea do you feel passionate about? Let's come back. Let's do a little writing on a document and sharing. Let's look at what we've created. And then I kind of individually go around and meet with them. A student who's having trouble with sentence composition, I might say, let's pull out these fabulous ideas. And now I'd like you to use some AI and let's see if you can get some structure that's traditional in here because you're writing a non-traditional structure and you can't get your point across. It's been a lifesaver for students with disabilities that are brilliant, but they just don't have the structure to write. And then I say, then they read it again. Do you like it? Do you want to change something? Just always teaching that critical lens that it's coming from you. You're just using this for support.
Can you tell me a little bit about your classroom? Like, how many classes are you teaching? What is the class size? I'm just curious to know, like, this approach feels very hands-on. And I think for some folks, it's daunting if they haven't tried it. So I'd love to just provide some context to other folks about exactly what context you're teaching in.
Yeah, I have in any given year, I have between 80 and 100 students. And I teach 4 sections per day. And each section, there's about 20 to 22 students in there. I've always taught in a workshop model. It's a mini lesson. Here's our task. Then students break off either into small groups or individually, and I'm circulating, supporting them. And then we come back and report back in, our progress. How are we doing? And then they go on to their next class. So it lends itself really well to, individualizing and personalizing what they're doing.
Right. And that's a similar context to, the average of American high school or middle school rather. So that's again, very reassuring. We hear some pushback from folks about the value of like still forcing students to write by hand versus like typing everything, or even like pushback against why are they having to learn these skills when they could just talk to their AI and have it write something for them. So have you had those conversations with parents in particular? And then also like, how do you view the role of what you're teaching in the future?
Yeah. Well, so parents really have been concerned about their students' handwriting and spelling more than ever because I've seen such a deterioration in that. I put out a memo or an email to parents about their kids and said, "Do you want more instruction in this?" They said yes. It's not part of my curriculum in middle school, so I sent home some practice stuff for kids to do. I sent home about 60 of them. Not one came back. So nothing was being done at home. So I mostly have the conversations with the students. I haven't had pushback about handwriting. Even it seems like they want more traditional return to that and less screen time because their kids are having so much screen time at home.
It does seem like parents in different areas have different responses. We've heard some parents who are in the same boat who are very excited to like advocate for the importance of writing and the importance of handwriting in particular, but also there's like the struggle of the writing process, even especially at higher levels. And then we have parents who are pushing back against some curricular decisions based on like, why is my kid still learning this? Why are they not like using the tools they'll use in their future careers? And it's always interesting to hear what different contexts parents have in terms of thinking about the role of their kids' classrooms. Now, you talked about experimenting with a lot of AI tools. It sounds like you're one of few who are doing so in your school. What makes you feel compelled to try these AI tools? What is exciting about them?
Yeah, I haven't used a lot of out there kinds of things. I'm not all that I'm not all that interested in teaching the technology of it because I see it come and go. What I'm interested in is teaching students how to make choices about which technology they're going to use based on what they've sketched out or drawn or written in their journals by hand. And what's your goal here? So oftentimes they've discovered the tools that they want to use on their own. But what compelled me is that this is just such a natural extension of teaching, reading, and writing in communication and creation, just a natural human extension to me. I never looked at it as anything artificial. And I felt like it's an obligation to bring students into this new medium and also provide them the support and the structure, which I've felt like I've had to invent a little bit as I've gone along.
Yeah, and I think that the pace of development is so fast. I'm sure that looks different even a year ago versus what you're thinking about for the fall. Obviously, the responsible usage of the tools is a huge part of your, how you approach it with your students. Do you use the tools yourself, and how do you communicate that to your students?
Yeah, well, I might tell them how I compose an email to parents. I'll definitely show them. I said, hey, here's what we needed to learn in this lesson. Here's some of the stuff I've taught in the past. And I put it into Chat GPT, or I've gone online and found some other lesson resources. And I've shown them what it gave me and what I've changed. Middle school kids love to find errors in things. So I sometimes will physically print a couple pages and say, here's our goal. Help me go through this. What do you think? And they'll find errors in there, especially if we're doing something like an author study and we've studied a little bit about the author's life, and they'll be like, wait a minute, this isn't correct. And I'm like, I know, I left it in there. I
Yeah, it's nice to capitalize on that know-it-all energy. I think that students have, especially when they can channel it in this productive way. Now, when you decide to use an AI tool, a particular AI tool, what does that look like? Is it a decision that you make independently? Do you have to go through an IT department? Do you have to tell your parents about it? What is the landscape of that?
I just use it. To me, it's like asking permission to use a book or a pencil. I mean, it's just a tool, and I haven't ever gone all out. We're just using technology. It's always a blend in a process. And I'm very lucky to just be able to make decisions in our school on what works best. So, yeah, I haven't had not in my school.
Yeah, yeah. So you've been able to kind of make the decision based on what's right for your classroom.
Exactly.
And now, shifting a little bit to thinking about like how students are engaging with the technology, and this can be broader than just AI. You mentioned concerns about keeping them engaged when they can get distracted and use, just Google whatever else or go off on a wild goose chase on the internet. What do you do to ensure that when you're using the technology, it's productive and that the students are staying engaged with the actual classroom material?
Paper checklists by their side, paper by their side to refer back and forth. And I talk about just the human brain, the process of needing that paper by your side. You've made your plans. Now you have your technology by your side. So we're back and forth. Also, circulating a lot, stopping the class a lot for check ins has helped most of the students. Students who have difficulty with impulse control for a variety of reasons are the ones, it's probably about 10% that it's an addiction. And I've talked to them about that. I said, your brain, as soon as you take a pause in your thinking, your brain's going to want to just go right out and start gaming. And you have to be aware of that. Get it off your tab, close your tab so you don't go there, and make a plan when you're going to go back there. So I'm just always talking to them like that. I think it helps. It's not 100%. I'll yell across the room, I see your eyeballs shifting back and forth. You're gaming. And they go, yeah, I am. And I just say, catch yourself. You're going to have to deal with this your whole life.
Right. And it's also helping them build the right habits, right? And like you say, like it is something that's going to follow them outside of the classroom. And so even if you can like punitively enforce it in your classroom, it's much better that they can also go home and decide when to game and not game and make those decisions. It sounds like at every stage you do have it is a much more flexible, let's talk about this and let's talk about why we're doing this approach to it. And I think that it's good to hear that it's working, especially with the middle school audience.
One of my jobs has also been as a strategist, as a teaching coach. I did for a couple of years. So one of the things is really getting teachers off the idea that it's not about the technology, it's about building community and relationships in your classroom. Once you get that, then you can kind of go into this technology and it's less scary that you're teaching students about your self-control and their self-control using it.
And on that note, like you obviously have thought about this a lot, learned about the technology and what's available. Where does that happen? Are these formal PD sessions? Are you on the internet? Are you learning from the students? I'm just kind of curious about where you will gain your knowledge about the tech.
I think I first started with your organization. I first, over the summer of, I think it was 2022, I saw a couple things come out that I took over the summer. And then at August, I got a hold of my principal. I said, we're already a year behind. We got to move. I got some money, and Nina did a workshop for our staff. was offered to our staff, and we reserved a bunch of slots. Teachers were also given the option of working in their room instead. So I ended up having just like 8 or 10 come, but that was kind of one of my first sessions. I attended a all-day workshop with the Maine Principals Association with Jethro Jones. So I ended up there, and it was one of my best experiences. He was fabulous. I did an all-day session with Trevor Aleo. He was really good. So yeah, just picking up here and there. I read your book,
Yeah, it
really.
sounds like it's largely on your own. Do you hear from your peers that they're struggling with these, the developments in the tech?
Only that I got a paper turned in the other day and it was all written by AI, and not a lot of movement beyond that. The first year when I was going around, hey, let's all take these workshops, I got kind of like a deer in the headlight, wait, what? Kind of look. Now it's evolved into we have to have, rules in place now and they're cheating. And I just feel like this is a stage that we need to go through as school systems first to get to the other side, which makes sense. We can't go forward if we don't have procedures in place. But I think we need a lot more PD.
When it comes to that PD, what does the ideal look like for you? Because there's obviously a whole spectrum. There's, let's talk about what an algorithm is and talk about the data science behind it. Here's this very specific tool and how do you use this tool? What parts of that feel appealing or right to you when you think about what your colleagues need or even what you need?
I think what my colleagues need, especially older teachers, they want hands-on, give me something that I can use right now, which doesn't hold up without a little theory. So it's kind of like light theory, hands-on kind of approach. But definitely, I think I learned from Jethro actually that I translated to my classroom is what is your goal? What do you want to achieve? Map that out carefully, get it straight in your mind, and then go out and find the AI tools on your own. And what did you find? And that has, I think, when teachers have that opportunity, you start hearing them getting excited. We did a little bit of that in one of our workshops because it became personal to them. I think starting with how can you use AI for managing yourself, your profession, and communication is the first step.
When you think about the next 5 years, what are you most excited about with the technology?
I think what excites me the most is kind of leading students into knowing themselves as individuals, understanding themselves as being part of humanity in a whole global community, and then how do they express themselves as individuals and figure that out first. If it's crayons and markers on paper, whatever it is. And then how do we use these tools to make the most mind-blowing videos, podcasts, whatever it is that their creativity can imagine. And I want them to have themselves in it. And I can see that coming over the next 5 years.
Yeah, that seems like that does seem like the ideal is like helping students express themselves better rather than squashing their ability to express. What are you most concerned about?
I'm most concerned about students not seeing themselves as experts and learners and just taking what comes at them passively from anything online and AI, and just passively taking it and not putting themselves into it. So I think almost as we go forward in technology, we almost need to pour a lot more effort into those soft human skills, or so we don't lose them. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. This is very, very helpful.
Thanks again. I enjoyed talking with you, and best of luck with this new book.
Thank you. Thank you. How to teach writing in the age of AI is one of the most difficult questions, and Kim pushes us not to take sides and focus on teaching students to think critically about when and how to use AI. Her focus on student agency, creative expression, and cultivating soft skills reminds us that technology should amplify learning, not replace it. Stay with us this season as we continue exploring how educators are navigating these difficult questions. And for more on how to approach these difficult questions, pre-order my upcoming book, Ethical EdTech, at ethicaledtech.org. Thanks for listening to Margin of Thought. If this episode gave you something to think about, subscribe, rate, and review us. Also, share it with someone who might be asking similar questions. You can find the show notes, transcripts, and my newsletter at preten.org. Until next time, keep making space for the questions that matter.